The year is 1991. Like his fellow baby boomers, Steven Spielberg is hitting middle age and starting to take stock. And one of the first things he notices is that the kids aren't all right. Child star Macaulay Culkin is a national sensation after his performance in Home Alone as a child who makes his family disappear and then tortures the mentally challenged adults who stumble into his lair. In 1991, he stars in the music video for Michael Jackson's Black and White as a rebellious child who launches his dad into the stratosphere. Culkin wasn't some strange outlier. The precociously angry child was all the rage. 1991's mega blockbuster Terminator 2 featured Edward Furlong as the juvenile John Connor, blowing off his foster parents to steal from ATMs and wreak havoc. Other examples of the type were the kids in What About Bob, Problem Child, Addams Family, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Dick Tracy, RoboCop 2. I could go on. What was going on to make these kids so angry at adults? Spielberg's Hook is an attempt to address this question, and while it ultimately settles for a cheaply sentimental, almost glib answer, it stirs up a lot of deeper, darker insights on the way. And that's what we're going to get into on this episode of The Morals of the Story, The Wrath of the Lost Boys, and the Secret Meaning of Hook. Welcome to the first episode of The Morals of the Story, where we take deep dives into popular stories and see what they have to tell us about the things that really matter. The theme verse for this episode is Ephesians 6:4, which tells fathers not to provoke our children to wrath. This begs the question of what kind of parenting provokes kids to wrath. This is also Steven Spielberg's question in Hook. He was asking not just as a then newly minted father of young children, but as a baby boomer looking back on his own fleeting youth and wondering what these Gen X teenagers and their snot-nosed millennial siblings were so angry about. Hadn't the boomers already overthrown all the most hateful aspects of American society? The story that provides the narrative framework for this line of inquiry is a modern update on Peter Pan. In Hook, Peter Pan becomes Peter Banning, a stand-in for the boomers, a once eternal youth who left his childhood Neverland to start a family and start a career. Like Spielberg, Peter is a big shot in the grown-up world, and the demands of his adult life place a strain on his young family, especially on the kids who must compete with his business partners for attention. Peter is oblivious to this. The passive-aggressive behavior of his preteen son Jack is particularly mystifying to him. Why does he have to be such a little jerk? Here he is mocking his dad for his fear of flying and drawing pictures of him falling to his death from a plane crash.
You're afraid you're going to get sucked out.
I'm not afraid of being sucked out.
Yes, you are. You're afraid you're going to be sucked out.
Just stop. Jack, next season I'm coming to 6 games, I promise.
Be sure to buy enough videotape.
Hey, Jack. My word is my bond.
Yeah, junk bond.
Peter's wife, most likely echoing Spielberg's wife, Kate Capshaw, chides him for neglecting him for his career and tells him to fix his family first.
We have a few special years with our children when they're the ones that want us around. After that, you're going to be running after them for a bit of attention. So fast, Peter. It's a few years.
Peter still doesn't get it, blithely transitioning from this argument to headlining the gala that celebrates Grandma Wendy Darling for being so kind to lavish poor, neglected orphans like him with love and attention. At this point, it is not clear whether Spielberg and his screenwriters intend Peter to come off as clueless or callous. Does he not realize he's choosing his career over his kids, or does he not care? Enter Captain Hook, traveling across dimensions to press the question by taking Peter's kids. As a sidebar, which will become more relevant later, I want to point out how strange this device is when viewed on its own. In the original story, Captain Hook was a pretty conventional pirate. The fairy Tinkerbell was the only one enabling travel between Earth and Neverland. But Spielberg grants Hook that power through some unseen and never explained mechanism, perhaps the most flagrant single departure from the source materials. But let's return to the question. Is Peter's problem that he's clueless or callous? And here Spielberg ventures into darker territory than you'd expect by tipping the scales toward the latter answer. Faced with the abduction of his kids by a fantasy villain, and confronted by Grandma Wendy with his true identity as Peter Pan, Peter isn't odd, he's contemptuous. With his children's lives in the balance and the role of hero thrust into his hands, his first act is to blow it off and get drunk. Even when Tinkerbell shows up to make the fantasy real, he doubles and triples down on his disbelief, forcing Tinkerbell to Shanghai him into heroic service. In the hero's journey template for storytelling, this phase of a story is known as the refusal of the call, but it's unusual for it to be taken this far. And Spielberg isn't even done. Long after all rational reasons to suspend his belief flew out the window, Peter absurdly insists on sticking to his wimpy corporate lawyer identity to avoid any kind of heroic responsibility. This is all the more pathetic when Hook confronts him with his children bound and tied and dares him to rescue them. Peter lamely tries to buy him off, and then even more pathetically mails in his effort to rescue his children. Part of this is just the screenwriter sandbagging Peter, so his eventual transformation will be more dramatic, but this goes beyond that. Spielberg's subtext, brought to the surface later, is not that out-of-shape, namby-pamby Peter can't rescue his children, it's that he doesn't really want to. This forbidden thought is terrible to consider, but it is at least a worthy contender to explain the big question of the movie and the era. Why do all these kids hate their parents? And for a few sequences, Spielberg is bold enough to explore it, using the dastardly Captain Hook as the accuser of the boomers. Hook starts off with a lesson to Peter's kids, literally titled, Why Parents Hate Their Children. His case? That parents are happier before their kids are born, and as soon as they've had their children, they come to regret and resent them for the burdens they impose.
I think your mother raised you every night in order to stupefy you to sleep. So that she and Daddy could sit down for 3 measly minutes without you, and your mindless, inexhaustible, unstoppable, repetitive, and nagging demands. He took my toy. She hit my bear. I want a potty. I want a cookie. I want to stay up. I want me. Mine. Now. Can't you understand, child? They tell you stories to shut you up.
This doesn't just fit the child-free subreddit, it explains Peter's behavior towards his kids, and Jack especially. Hook hammers the point home by indulging Jack in a classic 90s kids misbehaving episode, goading him into smashing clocks with the hammer or reciting all the ways his father has let him down. This brings Jack to the tearful and not unjustified conclusion that his dad doesn't really like him.
This is for never letting me blow bubbles in my chocolate milk.
Good form! Bravo!
Isn't that wonderful?
This is for never letting me jump on my own bed.
Make time stand still, laddie.
For always making promises and breaking them. For never doing anything with me.
For a father who's never there, Jack. Jack, for a father who didn't save you on the ship.
He wasn't supposed.
Who couldn't save you, Jack.
Oh, he wouldn't. He didn't even try. He was there, we were there, and he wouldn't try.
And still Spielberg isn't done. Peter's just one father, but Spielberg takes on child angst in the broader societal context through The Lost Boys, using them not just to whip Peter back into shape, but to continue his exploration of the wrathful children question. Hook's Lost Boys are mostly just a Nickelodeon-era reskin of the Disney originals, with the important exception of Rufio. Unlike his pre-teen companions, Rufio is a full-blown teenager. While the rest of the Lost Boys look like they just walked in off the set of Newsies, Rufio looks ready to take the stage for a punk rock band. He's also far angrier than his young compatriots and more directly confrontational.
I want to speak to a grown-up! All grown-ups are pirates!
Excuse me?
We kill pirates.
We've already seen why Jack is angry, but what explains the wrath of Rufio? Hook keeps Rufio's background obscure, but Spielberg gives us hints in Peter's flashback to his own Neverland origins. We see Peter as a baby in a runaway carriage, rolling away from an oblivious mother prattling on about her plans for his future. The carriage overturns, spilling him out and leaving him crying and miserable in the middle of what looks vaguely like a stone altar, reminiscent of the disturbing child sacrifice scene in George Lucas and Ron Howard's earlier fantasy Willow. In flies Tinkerbell to whisk Peter off to Neverland. Presented like this, Neverland seems like a pretty obvious stand-in for the Catholic notion of a limbus infantum, or limbo, the resting place for dead, unbaptized children. It seems obvious that the Lost Boys are dead children from an era when child mortality was shockingly high. This explains the period costumes worn by the rest of the Lost Boys. But as tragic as the death of a child is, it doesn't explain the movie's big question. When Peter's flashback reminds him of his first return to Earth from Neverland, we see him as a ghostly sprite hovering outside his parents' window.
But I was still a little boy. missed my mother, so I decided to fly home to my very own window. But it was shut. They'd forgotten about me.
It's perhaps the most powerful emotional scene in the movie, but the emotion it evokes is intense melancholy, not rage. It certainly does not adequately explain Rufio's anger. The modern Rufio does not appear to have come from the age of high infant mortality, nor does he share in their happy recollections of Toodles and his lost marbles, or of the joyous earlier Pan days. He seems to have no memory of his mother to cling to. He is a new arrival who apparently only knows a world of murderous adults and neglect. He is raw pain and anguish personified. So what could explain a modern edition of a Gen X child to Neverland? One who is far angrier and more insecure than earlier generations. You know what sent millions of Gen X babies to Neverland? Could it be abortion? Think about it. Rufio's fear and animosity towards all adults makes far more sense if he was not a dying child whisked away from his suffering by Tinkerbell, but someone violently ripped from the world in the same manner as Peter's children. Consider for a moment, if you can stomach it, the perspective of an unborn child about to be aborted. He grows in the warmth and protection of his mother's womb. His first and only contact with the outside world is with the sharp metal instrument of the abortionist. What would he think of adults? What would he think of himself? If an aborted baby became a lost boy, he would look like Rufio. This brings us to the final bit of unintentional symbolism, the hook itself. The promotional posters feature a hook front and center, which is a bit odd given that the story itself entirely revolves around the adult Peter. But as the symbol of an adult hatred and murderous intent toward children, of which Hook is the literal and symbolic embodiment, it makes perfect sense. Hook is the last thing the lost children of the post-Roe era ever see. His killing instrument is what tears them from the protection of their mother's womb and casts them into Neverland. He is the hitman sent by the adult world to rid them of their troublesome offspring. He is the manifestation of their cold indifference and unspoken malice, and he is out there, even though no one in the modern world is willing to acknowledge him. That Rufio ultimately perishes under Hook's blade cements the symbolism. It's another surprisingly dark touch. What other family movie of the era shows a child dying at an adult's hand? And it reflects the heavy subject matter Spielberg was exploring. Rufio spends his final breath telling Peter he wished he had a father like him, one willing to fight to save him as Peter ultimately fought for his kids.
Do you know what I wish? I wish I had a dad like you.
But no one fought for Rufio. He was left to fight Hook alone. If we look at Jack and Maggie as the two kids that most boomers had, Rufio is best understood as their aborted third child. He was the sacrifice made to facilitate that career and to afford that lifestyle. Now his ghost is here to remind the boomer not to sacrifice the surviving children on the same altar. That's heavy stuff, and almost certainly unintended by Spielberg, who has never indicated he's anything other than a conventional Hollywood liberal on the abortion issue, which to my knowledge, he's never even mentioned. My best guess is that Spielberg and company were touching on post-sexual revolution fatherlessness with the Rufio arc and stumbled onto abortion symbolism because it was so thick in the collective subconscious. The challenge for Spielberg then is dealing with all this metaphysical weight in the confines of an upbeat family adventure movie. His strategy is to sidestep the heaviest stuff and prepare Peter to handle the lighter load. The Lost Boys put him through what looks like a youth pastor boot camp to get him to lighten up and remember how to have fun goofing off with kids. Then his emotional flashback helps him to realize how much he once loved the idea of being a dad. Finally, he relearns what a great and powerful feeling it is to bask in the adulation of his children, as opposed to those underlings at work. It's the hedonistic argument in favor of being a good dad and winning back the trust of your children. Not exactly take up your cross, but effective enough. But the lightweight redemption arc inevitably falls short of the narrative's demands. The happy, carefree Peter can win back the affection of his kids and lead the Lost Boys into Nickelodeon-style food fights, but he's powerless to prevent or even avenge Rufio's death. Poor Rufio essentially disappears as soon as he hits the deck, unremembered, unmourned. Indeed, Peter's first move after Rufio's fall is to bail with his kids, leaving Hook free to carry on with his bloody work. But the subject matter refuses such an easy dismissal, and once again Spielberg tries to reckon with it. Here is Hook's bid to force Peter to turn and face him.
Peter! I swear to you, wherever you go, wherever you are, I vow there will always be daggers bearing notes. I'm James Hook. They will be flung at the doors of your children's children's children. Do you hear me?
With nothing in the tank capable of meeting this threat on equal footing, Spielberg lamely rigs a happy ending. When pushed to the brink by Hook and reminded of all his past failings, all it takes to push Peter back over the top is a chorus of supporting characters saying they all believe in him.
You know you're not really Peter Pan, don't you? This is only a dream. When you wake up, you'll just be Peter Banning, a cold, selfish man who drinks too much, is obsessed with success, and runs and hides from his wife and children.
I believe in you.
I believe in you.
I believe in you, Peter.
I believe in you.
You are the Pan.
You're Peter Pan.
I believe in you.
Peter makes that enough to defeat Hook in the movie, but it's very unconvincing. Stuart Smalley makes a poor vanquisher of evil. And so while Hook is destroyed and Peter's family is restored, Hook's threats still echo in our ears, the sins of the fathers stretching to haunt the next generations. While the open antagonism between children and adults that featured so heavily in the 90s has largely gone dark, the intergenerational hostility remains one of the most pronounced features of modern life. We see it playing out daily on social media, where Gen Xers, Millennials, and Zoomers unite in heaping abuse on the self-absorption and cruelty of the Boomers. So much so that in many online circles, Boomer is synonymous with sinner. Like Adam and Eve, they were born into paradise and ruined it for the rest of us. But in cataloging the sins of the Boomers, aren't we also compiling a list of our own faults? The Boomers may have aborted a third of their kids and resented many of the rest, but have any of the succeeding generations done any better? Even as we vilify them, we imitate their worst behaviors. It's convenient to make the Boomers our Captain Hook, soon to be devoured by the giant clock of Father Time, but he lives on among us as each generation quietly conspires with him to create new generations of lost boys. The wisest course for us, the children and heirs of the Boomers, is to adapt the advice of the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy. This is a faithful saying, and worthy of all acceptation, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save Boomers, of whom I am chief.